Hi, this is Mr. Evans. This video is going to look at 9 to 12 mark analyse questions. It might be quite a long video. I'll try and keep it as short as I can, but it might be worth you having a pen and a piece of paper because I'm going to show you some examples to example answers to exam questions, and you'll probably get most out of that if you've actually thought about what you would write first and then compare what you would write to the answer that I'm going to show you, many of which come from AQA themselves. So these longer analyse questions, longer than the 5 to 6 mark questions that I've produced a video before, come up in each of the papers. The analyse questions in paper 1 and paper 2 tend to be worth 9 marks, whereas there are two 12 mark questions in paper 3 which require the same structure and the same skills as a 9 mark analyse question. I'll do a separate video on understanding questions, but there's a few things to understand about how to break down a question so you know how to answer it. One way of doing it is to look at the instruction, the context and the focus. So the instruction is basically just telling you what skill you need to demonstrate. This can be worked out from looking at the command word in the question, but also the number of marks that are available, and just being aware of the structure of each paper and knowing what skills are going to come where. The most reliable way isn't to look at the number of marks. The most reliable way of working out what skill to demonstrate is to look at the command word and ensure you understand all of the command words and what they mean. The context identifies what business situation you're going to need to discuss and is often provided either through a case study or just simply through the way the question is worded, and we'll have a look at least one example where the context is provided in the question rather than by any case study material. And the focus of the question is what knowledge do you need to demonstrate, and often there'll be two kind of concepts from the specification that are linked, and you need to say how one affects or leads to the other. So instruction, context and focus is just useful when you're breaking down an exam question. So here are some examples of exam questions. So the first question I'm going to pick out is from paper 1 and it is worth 9 marks. The content, the question says some industries are dominated by a few large businesses. Analyse how these large businesses might increase their profits by influencing one of Porter's 5 forces. So the instruction is to analyse. I've underlined that in bold. That tells us what skill we need to demonstrate, which is to build a chain of analysis. The context I've highlighted in yellow. In this case, it's large businesses which dominate industries. Okay, some industries are dominated by a few large businesses. You should straight away realise, because you know your definitions, that they are explaining or defining an oligopoly. And the bits in red are the focus of the question. Okay, you need to know knowledge of Porter's 5 forces, and you need to link Porter's 5 forces to how these large businesses can increase their profits. So I've got an example here of a answer from AQA, and it's right here. Now this surprised me that this answer got 8 marks. It might be worth just pausing the video and reading the answer and the feedback from AQA. So hopefully you've paused the video and read this. Okay, so what has the student done? The student has answered the question by looking at one of Porter's 5 forces. In this case, the student has looked at barriers to entry and the threat of new entrants to the market. They haven't explicitly stated that, but they've said that large businesses can increase their profits. That's the focus of the question, how large businesses can increase their profits. They've identified that businesses and economies of scale, so they've got good knowledge. This means they can drive new entrants out of the market. The threat of new entrants is one of Porter's 5 forces. By lowering the selling price, below that which a new firm entering the market is able to charge. By keeping the new entrant out of the industry, large businesses can maintain their market share and profit margins rather than having to keep prices in line with competition. So it's very much in focus. Now, I would encourage my students certainly to make 2 points in a question. Now, AQA here have given this student 8 marks for writing what I think is 1 point, which is basically how economies of scale become a barrier to entry and drive new entrants out of the industry. So AQA have said they've got a good line of argument in paragraph 1 and followed through by addressing the key demands of the question, which is basically market share and profit margins. It's clearly in the context of big businesses. Personally, I would have wanted my students to have written a bit more on that. I would have wanted them to make a second point. Here's my second point. Large businesses can afford to spend large amounts of money on promotion, maybe large twice in a sentence isn't very good. This helps to build brand image and customer loyalty and becomes a barrier to entry to new businesses entering the market. So I'm still talking about new entrants. Therefore, large businesses can generate repeat sales because of advertising, which protects revenues and profits in the long term. But yeah, I didn't reread that. I would maybe look in terms of reading it to get rid of the 2 larges in a sentence. But hopefully with this second point now, that would have received 9 marks from AQA. The second example that I want to show you is from paper 2. And again, this one is worth 9 marks. Oh, no, that's the wrong thing. Here, so paper 2, the 9-mark question. Paper 2 comprises of 3 case studies. Again, I'll go through each paper in a bit more detail in a later video, but each paper 2 contains 3 case studies. This is some information that was given to you in the case study, and then the question is, with reference to figure 8, analyse the actions Kento should take regarding its product portfolio in Europe to improve its long-term financial performance. So again, I've underlined the instructions in bold. Again, we've got to analyse, we've got to build a chain of argument, but it says here we've got to make reference to figure 8. All right, we can't answer the question. We've been instructed to make reference to figure 8, which is the figure here. And the focus of the context, is Kento, this company that we've been given the information about its product portfolio. And the focus of the question is the actions that they could take in order to improve their long-term financial performance. So just one thing, how many actions? Well, we're going to need to focus on more than one. We can't just say one thing that they could do. That wouldn't be addressing the question. AQA are very keen that students interpret calculation versus calculations in a question, for example, action versus actions. We're going to need to talk about more than one thing, definitely, in this question. So making at least 2 points. So this time I've produced an answer for you. Hopefully you've recognised this as the Boston matrix, even though it hasn't been labelled as such, and you should be able to now identify the various categories in the Boston matrix. For example, high market share, high market growth would be a star product. Now, maybe it's just worth pausing the video and just thinking about how you would answer the question. This is my answer to the question, and again, maybe just pause and read my answer. So, just to break down how I've answered the question. The question is about the actions that Kento should take to improve their long-term financial performance. Well, I've started off with a definition. I've identified that this is the Boston matrix, and I've given a definition of that. So the examiner should credit me with some knowledge marks straight away. Figure 8, so the question has told me to refer to figure 8, so I'm telling the examiner straight away that I'm referring to it. Shows that Kento could have one product that could be categorized as the dog, which is their mint cola. I've explained what a dog is. I've explained that the prospects of earning future profits, now that's important because we're talking about long-term financial performance, is low, and Kento should consider divesting of their mint cola. This is the action they should take to reduce the costs incurred in producing and marketing this product. Okay, reducing costs. I'm talking about financial performance. Okay, so it's very clear that this is in the context of Kento. I've identified they've got a dog, and I've said that they need to take an action which is divest of it, which will reduce their costs, which is about future financial performance. And then I've got some more actions because that's only one, and at the moment the maximum I could possibly earn is 5 marks. I've identified that Kento have got their 3 cash cow products. Explain what they are. Strategically, these products could be important because they are likely to generate large revenues but incur relatively low costs. Okay, because they require less spending on promotion. Therefore, okay, so I've explained what the product is in terms of future financial performance, large revenues, low costs, use the profits generated by the cash cows to promote their 2 question mark products. Right? I'm explaining the action. They should use their product to promote their 2 question mark products. Right, 2 question marks up here with the low share of the high growth market. These products have huge potential as they're in a high growth market but require promotion to build their market share. This could improve the long-term financial performance of Kento as they lack any star products, which are important as these products could become the cash cow of the future. So hopefully what you can see, my answer looks at its reference figure 8. I build a nice chain of argument, and I've looked at the actions Kento should take in order to improve its long-term financial performance. And what else I've done that a high-level student would do is that I've linked these. I've talked about it as a singular product portfolio, using these revenues earned by these cash cows to promote these products, which should move them into the star area, which will protect future financial performance. So I hope that gives a demonstration of, it's a similar structure to the one that I suggested you use before, definition and making 2 points, a nice argument across 2 paragraphs. Should be enough for 9 marks. The final question that I want to look at is this 12 mark one, which occurs in paper 3. And the question, instruction, analyse, context, Sainsbury's between 2000 and the context between 2004 and 2013. And the question is about how marketing research can increase its market share. Now, as you probably are aware by this stage, paper 3 comprises of a case study, and then all of the questions are based on this case study. So there's 3 pages of information that you need to interpret. A really good hint for finding the information that you need is to look at the key terms in the question, and see where they appear in the case study. Now, obviously, you can do this in the real exam, but one of the key terms is market research. So I'm going to look for the term market research in the case study. Well, when I use this function, which obviously you wouldn't be able to do, I can see that there's a reference to research in line 6, again in line 14, and again in this section here. So I'm going to be looking at these sections here in order to answer these questions. And as I'm reading the case study, I will have just put some notes by there. I would have said research here, so I can just come back straight to this section of the case study and know that the information that I'll need is there. Now, this is an answer that was produced by a student, and you can see the structure of this answer. So market share means how much of the industry is taken by a particular business. Market research consists of finding out the nature of a market. Okay, so they've started off with 2 really clear definitions of the key terms in the question, market share and market research, getting straight off the mark with some knowledge. the student puts it in context at the start of the paragraph by saying that the supermarket was changing during 2004 to 2013. And they've used a combination of their own knowledge in the case study to explain how. So, for example, they've mentioned here that Tesco was opening branches overseas, and that occurs here, which is regarded too risky. Market research showed this segment was going fast, the local convenience store. So the students using the case study, to build their answer here. Now, they've just explained the context. Now they're linking to market research. Without market research, Sainsbury's could have followed their instincts and gone for all of these, which could have been a disaster financially. Instead, the market research that Justin King set up allowed it to see which route would be best for it. Okay, so we're linking the market research to the strategy that Sainsbury's have taken. A second point here is that market research showed that Tesco's overseas stores were losing money, and primary research shows that Sainsbury's customers did not want them to go to cut price stores but did expect value for money. It found out information from their customers. Without this market research, Sainsbury's would have lost sales and market shares to other supermarkets, whereas with the information it had, it was able to make effective market decisions and gain sales relative to others. This final paragraph here is key because it links the market research to market share and clearly links those two bits using the evidence. So this answer is built up by combining the application, linking to the market research. What else did we find out from the market research? Then showing how the market research improved the market share. Rather than making two separate points, the answer here is marked over the whole development of the answer, and we can look at it as a whole, seeing how this shows knowledge, analysis, and is clearly applied to the context.